Environment Minister Catherine McKenna is being slightly unhinged again. I mean, it's nothing new. It's just been a while since she's done it quite publicly. She just called anyone who opposes carbon taxes arsonists. Look at this bizarre tweet. Conservative politicians want to fight about a price on carbon pollution. You want to make it free to pollute while Canadians pay with their lives threatened, homes destroyed, and their communities obliterated. So what are you going to do? You are the arsonists. Real people are being charged with arson in relation to forest fires in this country. But Catherine McKenna is writing their defense arguments for them. You see, I'm the problem if I drive an SUV just a little bit too much, and you're the problem if you reject carbon taxes as a means by which to change the weather. You're the arsonist, but the firebugs, not so much. And BC, by the way, they've had a carbon tax for over a decade, imposed in 2008, actually. So when are the fire suppression benefits going to kick in for that thing? And McKenna, she brought in one of her own carbon taxes not all that long ago. Well, 5 years ago in 2018, when she was Trudeau's constantly embarrassing gaffe-prone environment minister that I dubbed Climate Barbie, much to her horror. And again, I ask, when are the tithes to McKenna's Church of Climate Change going to satiate an angry weather god so that he stops boiling us alive or burning our villages?
Catherine McKenna, the former Liberal minister, accused Conservatives of being arsonists over the opposition to the carbon tax. So what's your response to her comment, and what do you say to climate alarmists or maybe people that say that not having a carbon tax will lead to a climate catastrophe?
What I really worry about is the increased radicalization of rhetoric by Liberals, particularly Justin Trudeau, but the nastiness and meanness that they're directing at people who disagree with their policies, whether it's Trudeau's nasty comments directed at Muslim parents, or whether it is him jabbing his finger in people's faces, and now a former Liberal minister saying that anybody who doesn't want to pay higher taxes is an arsonist. Really? Really? As if we paid higher taxes, we'd have less forest fires? Come on. Let's get back to some common sense in this country. And let's start to bring our people together instead of tearing the country apart.
And just how many people, how many Canadians, cash-strapped, struggling to get by Canadians, did Catherine McKenna just call arsonists because they don't think taxes change the weather? Oh, about 60% of Canadians, at least according to some very recent polling released by Ipsos on behalf of the Montreal Economic Institute. Now, to be fair, the Montreal Economic Institute, they're a bunch of free market advocates, but let's not confuse Ipsos for a bunch of conservatives, okay? They have an entire page dedicated to their social credit ESG score. They're not exactly a bunch of hard blue Tories over there. But let me show you these poll results because they're really bad for the Liberals and good for common sense. People, even in deep Liberal strongholds and traditional left-leaning or Liberal voters like young people, well, they are all being mugged by the reality of Trudeau's inflationary policies, including his carbon taxes and his war on oil and gas. Let's get into it. Canada and Quebec's energy needs, on behalf of the Montreal Economic Institute. A sample of 1,163 Canadian residents aged 18 years and over, with an oversample of 408 residents in Quebec, was interviewed between the 1st and 4th of August, 2023. Let's get into some of the results here. Half, 51% of Quebecers are in favor of extracting Quebec's own oil resources, while 3 in 10, 30% believe the province should continue to import 100% of the oil it needs. What I find here is fascinating, but not just in this result, but in results throughout this polling data. Young people, traditional Liberal voters, people who are traditionally against fracking and things like that, are actually in support of Quebec developing its own oil resources. 57%. Actually, it was the young people who are the most in favor, perhaps because they want those well-paying jobs. Let's keep going. Over 6 in 10, actually 63% of Canadians, are in favor of increasing incentive measures for carbon sequestration to be equivalent to those offered by the American government, a 4-point increase compared to 2022. Now, I don't even think that people are in favor of carbon sequestration here. Carbon sequestration, or taking the carbon from the atmosphere and just sort of hiding it in the ground till they figure out what to do with it, I don't think they're in favor of that. They're in favor of any alternative that doesn't require Canadians to pay extra money for their carbon emissions, because they can't pay any extra money for their carbon emissions. And we'll get to that polling data further in this video. And I'll show you where Canadians say we just can't pay any more money. But I don't think they're in favor of carbon sequestration. I think they're in favor of saying anything please, but taxing me more. Let's keep going. Almost 8 in 10, or 78% of Quebecers prefer to import oil from Western Canada, consistent with last year. This warms my heart, but also makes me sad simultaneously, because Justin Trudeau wants us all divided. He wants us Albertans to think that we are butting heads all the time with everyday Quebecers, and I don't believe we are. We are butting heads with politicians in Quebec, and we are butting heads with the federal government, who wants us to believe that Quebecers have a certain sentiment about us and our oil that they just don't have. Quebecers want oil from Alberta. Albertans want to give it to them. The only thing dividing us is the federal government and their anti-oil policies. And again, it's younger people, traditional liberal or left-leaning voters. 72% of them want oil from Western Canada. That's a devastating number for Justin Trudeau and his Liberals, who continue to block pipelines from Western Canada. This next polling data demonstrates the wholesale adoption of the concept of ethical oil as an alternative to conflict oil across the world. In light of the war in Ukraine, 6 in 10, 63% of Canadians believe their province should extract its own natural gas in order to export some to Europe and reduce its dependency on Russian gas. So this just isn't about developing our own resources for us. We see our own resources as a vehicle for freedom. And I think that is absolutely terrific. Now, this next number. These are Catherine McKenna's arsonists. Those people she accused of being responsible for the fires, even though her friends are still in charge in government, both in BC where the fires are, but also in Ottawa, making climate policy since 2015. Somehow the people with no power are the ones responsible for the policies of the current government. Okay, but anyway, I want to show you just how many people she accused of wholesale arson. 6 in 10 Canadians, 61%, can't or don't want to pay more in taxes to fight climate change. 61%. And it's not that they just don't want to. They're saying they can't. They don't have any money left to pay the climate tithe to Catherine McKenna's cult of climate change. They just don't have the money left. And again, the young people. Oh, the young people. This is such a devastating number for the Liberals. Over half of young people polled, ages 18 to 34, 54% have gotten off the carbon tax crazy train. 54% say they don't want to or simply can't pay any more money for no benefit with result to climate change.